Welcome to meditation from a Jewish perspective. With the Hebrew words, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, we will be guided to discover the poetry in the everyday world that surrounds us. Through Hasidic folk stories, music, and pictures of a world often overlooked in the frenetic rush of harried lives, we look to discover a world whose simple beauty can bring a new and a refreshing perspective. As you will discover, to begin your day with a few minutes of reflective thought has not only been part of the Jewish experience, but carries a nurturing refreshment that can enrich your day. Meditation reaches deep into Jewish history, found almost at the very beginning of the Jewish story, with the patriarch Isaac. In the book of Genesis, we find Isaac about to meet his future wife, meditating in the field.
Meditation allows us to reach deep inside and listen. Meditation has a silent quality that honors the art of becoming receptive. When we meditate, we stop to listen and allow the activity of our minds and hearts to, in a sense, speak for us. Eventually, we fall into a deep silence, to a place that underlies all the noise and fray of daily human existence. In this place, it becomes possible for us to hear the sounds and see the world around us, letting it speak for itself, responding to our questions, becoming one with us in its quiet way. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one.
Shema Yisrael, Yisrael, Adonai, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai, Echad, Shema Yisrael, Adonai.
One of the early Jewish mystics, Abraham Abulafi, perceived the need for something capable of stimulating the soul's deeper life and freeing it from ordinary perception. Though he doesn't use the word, I believe he is speaking of a mantra. For Abulafi, the entire Hebrew alphabet served this purpose, becoming his guide to the spiritual. For us today in our post-Holocaust age, in which we have been witness to the creation of the third Jewish Commonwealth, the State of Israel, whose existence does not merely rely on the largesse of the world's nation-states, but rather upon the readiness of Israel's modern Maccabees to ensure their survival. For the Jew of today, our mantra becomes the 25 Hebrew letters that form the Shema, our affirmation of being an historic people, inspired, guided, and energized by life's eternal source, Adonai.
As we say together, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one.
You may ask, what is the time of day for Shema meditation? We find our answer in the very first words of the Talmud, in which the rabbis declare that the Shema may be first recited in the morning at dawn, at a time when there is enough light to distinguish.
A rabbi once asked his students, "How can you determine the hour of dawn, when the night ends and the day begins?" One of the rabbi's students suggested, "Well, it's when from a distance you can distinguish between a dog and a sheep." "No," was the answer of the rabbi. Well, a second student responded, "It's when one can distinguish between a fig tree and a grapevine." "No," said the rabbi. "Well," responded the students, "please tell us, dear rabbi, the answer." And the rabbi responded, "It is when you can look into the face of another human being, and you have enough light in you to recognize your brother or your sister. Until then, no matter what time of day it is night, and darkness is still with us."
Shema Yisrael, Yisrael, Adonai, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai, Echad, Shema Yisrael, Adonai.
If you're Jewish today, most likely someone in your ancestry at one time lived in one of the thousands of small villages, the shtetl, that made up the Pale of Settlement of Central Europe. It was here that we find Hasidic Judaism, whose value-laden stories provide rich material for meditation. Among the founders of Hasidic Judaism is Menachem Mendel Morgenstern, the famous Kotzker rabbi, who for the last 20 years of his life meditated in silence. Before his silence, he was known for his passion for truth. Elie Wiesel speaks of him as a soul on fire. Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote a book about him, A Passion for Truth. And I am a sixth-generation descendant of this rabbinic master known as the Kotzker Rabbi. Menachem Mendel once said of silence, "Certain experiences may be translated by language, others more profound by silence." And then he added, "The truths we search, the ones we look for, must be reflected in the way we live." Emblematic of this search for a living truth is the famous Hasidic story.
Isaac's treasure.
Isaac was a good man. He and his wife and 2 children lived in a small little village in Poland, east of the big city of Warsaw, north of the beautiful and romantic city of Krakow. Isaac worked very hard to provide for his family. Isaac often dreamed of treasure, some place in the world that would bring happiness to his family. It so happened that once when business was especially poor and very few customers came into the store, Isaac would often think of the treasure that he was sure was somewhere hidden. Then it happened. One night, when the family was fast asleep, Isaac was awoken to a strange-sounding voice. "Isaac, Isaac." Isaac sat up in bed and said, "Yes, who is it? I'm Isaac. I want you to go to the big and wonderful city of Krakow. There you will find a large, beautiful castle on a hill. And at the bottom of the hill you will see a river. And crossing over the river you will find a bridge. And under the bridge, if you dig, you will find a treasure. Now go, dig for that treasure. Isaac woke up his wife and told her of his dream. Oh, Isaac, go back to sleep. You're just having a dream. Now forget it. Let's get some sleep. We've got a lot of work to do in the morning. Get to sleep. So Isaac went back to sleep. The next morning he got up, but all day as he waited on the few customers to come into the store, he could not forget his dream. The next night, when all was quiet and everyone in the house was fast asleep, it happened. Isaac once again heard a strange voice calling his name. Isaac! And again the command to go to Krakow and find the hidden treasure. That was it. Isaac got up out of bed, wrote a note to his wife, telling her not to worry. He was going to Krakow and would be back in a few days with the treasure. After several days on the road, stopping at one little village after another, going to the community center where he always was given food and drink and a little rest, Isaac arrived at the city of Krakow. And sure enough, just as the dream had said, there was a large and beautiful castle on the hill, and a river down below it, and over the river a bridge, all as the dream had predicted. Isaac carefully approached the bridge. Suddenly he stopped. There were 2 guards on patrol guarding the bridge. He sat down and waited through the day and through the night. But the bridge was always guarded. There was no way for him to dig unnoticed. Oh no, what was this? One of the guards began walking over to him, and yes, he was calling to him. Isaac didn't know what to say. Should he tell the guard what he was really doing? What else could he say? So Isaac told the guard all about his dream, and the guard started laughing. Laughing and laughing. Yes, he was laughing hysterically. And the more he laughed, the more scared Isaac became. What was happening? Why was the guard laughing so hard? What was he going to do to Isaac? Isaac began shaking with fear. Finally, the guard stopped laughing long enough to say to Isaac, I can't believe you came all the way here to Krakow because of a dream. Man, if I believed every dream I had, I would have gone to a small village many days' journey north of here, to a home with a small store in front of it, to dig under the floor of that house. You see, I too had a dream that a huge treasure lay hidden under the stove in a home of someone named Isaac. But there are so many villages and so many Isaacs. How could I ever hope to find this village, or even the home of the right Isaac? Who ever heard of something so ridiculous? Now, my friend, get out of here, and I'll forget that I ever saw you sitting by this bridge. As soon as Isaac heard the guard's story, and before the guard could say another word, he turned and ran home as fast as his legs would carry him. It seemed that in no time at all, he arrived back in his little village. Running down his little street, he burst through the front door of his home, ran into the kitchen where his wife was preparing breakfast for the children. He didn't even stop to say hello. He went straight to the iron stove without noticing that it was red hot and full of burning wood. Furiously, he began digging in the spot where the stove usually stood. Isaac's wife thought her husband was a crazy dreamer. Now she was convinced. She and the children watched in wide-eyed amazement as Isaac destroyed her kitchen floor. The shovel hit something metallic. With absolute joy, Isaac bent down and lifted up a rusted metal box. Isaac sat down and carefully rested the box in his lap as he slowly opened its rusty hinges.
And what he discovered was...
the treasure was where it has always been. Only now Isaac's eyes were open to see it. Isaac's family gave him the biggest hug, and his son said to him,
Daddy, I'm so glad you came home. I miss you so much. I love you.
The Kotzker Rebbe perhaps first heard this story from his own master, Rabbi Bruno, who liked to repeat it every time he accepted a new disciple. Remember, Isaac, the treasure that is yours is to be found only in yourself, nowhere else. But there is more, as the rabbis began arguing. Did the treasure belong to Isaac alone? What about the captain of the guard? What about his share? To which came the response, sometimes the answers to our dreams come from sources least expected. Sometimes our dreams find their answer from the ones we see as our enemy, our nemesis. All we have to do is be open to listening.
If you're lost, you feel afraid, and you don't know what to say, then listen, listen to our God. Is there a question on your mind? Is the answer hard to find? Then listen, listen to our God. Listen with all your heart and soul, and with all your might. Write them and learn them and teach them well, every morning and night. Close your eyes and listen. Yourself, there's nothing to say. Stop all the chatter that gets in the way, and listen, listen to our God. When the wind and the thunder finally disappear, there's still a voice that you will hear if you listen, listen to our God. You can hear it from the top of the highest hill, or from the valley below. It can come from the edge of the universe. It can come from within your soul. So close your eyes and listen. To our God. Listen, listen to our God. If you're lost, you feel afraid, and you don't know what to say, then listen, listen to our God.
As we say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. A student once challenged the Kotzker rabbi to prove the existence of God. "Rabbi," he said, "please tell me, where is God, and how do I know that there is a God?" The rabbi thought for a while. Then he looked up at the student and said, "God? You want to know where God is? God is where you let God in." As we say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Water is an essential ingredient for our life. We are born in water. 50% of our bodies is water. We can live but a very short time without water, and we cannot live in water. Is it any wonder that Judaism has created an entire ritual institution, the mikveh, to sanctify us through water? But it doesn't take the mikveh to awaken our spirits to the powerful pull water has upon us. It makes no difference if you are 1,000 feet or just a few feet from its surface. It matters little if you're laid out on water's slippery surface or absorbed its life 70 feet below the surface. Water's captivating embrace leaves no part of us untouched, filling us with a new thirst for living.
Shema Yisrael, Yisrael, Adonai, Adonai
as we say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one.
There is nothing more whole than a broken heart. The Kotzker Rebbe, with these words, created a paradox. How can a heart that has been broken be more whole than one that never suffered being torn apart? A heart shattered by loss or disillusionment, and now left alone with only pain-filled tears, its companion. A heart so deeply stricken, the tears often remain blocked inside, waiting in silence, waiting as the icy outside of the storm inside keeps issuing instructions to carry on, regardless of the tears that won't flow. What could the Kotzker have been thinking when he said these words? An answer can be found in a parable which can be best described as a children's story for adults, written by Shel Silverstein, The Missing Piece. The story is of a circle that was not whole and who searched the world for its missing piece. And because it was missing a piece, it had to travel very slowly. And so it went along, stopping to look at the flowers, to talk to the spider hanging from its gossamer thread, share a meal with the blue jay or the squirrel. It stopped to rest in the cool grass, and wherever it went in search of its missing piece.
But it couldn't find it. Nothing fit. Then suddenly, one day, it found a piece that seemed to fit perfectly. The circle was whole again. Nothing was missing. And now, because it was whole again, it could roll much faster. And so it rolled quickly through the world. It rolled too quickly to notice the flowers, too fast for any of the insects to talk to it. And when the circle noticed that it was rolling too fast to do any of the things it had been doing for years, it stopped, reached down, and took out its missing piece, and it slowly rolled away, looking for its missing piece.
This little story answers the Kotzker Rebbe's paradox. It says that people are more whole when we are incomplete, when we're missing something. We'd rather it not be true, but more often than not, when we lose something or someone precious, or when we lose our health, that little bit of incompleteness can cure us of our illusion of self-sufficiency, opening us up to feeling more, seeing more, experiencing more. In a paradoxical way, the man or woman who doesn't struggle will miss some of the most poignantly beautiful experiences in life. The one who glides by will never know what it feels like to yearn, to hope. That person will not and will never understand the songs and poetry that are born out of a longing, out of a grieving, out of an incompleteness. You can never make such a person happy by giving them something they would enjoy, because by definition, they already have it. In a strange way, the person who believes he has everything, who feels he is missing absolutely nothing, is in many ways missing everything. As the Kotzker reminded us, there is nothing more whole than a broken heart.
As we say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Listen, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Permit me to finish with a story, a true story, my gift to you for sharing your meditation time with me. I was interviewing Eddie Lefkowitz, a Holocaust survivor. We were talking about Jewish life in Poland before the war. Eddie was telling me of the first time he visited the mikveh. My papa took me, and I will never forget that day as long as I live. Eddie's voice warmed with the memory, and as he spoke, a smile crossed his lips, bringing out an almost mischievous twinkle to his eyes. The mikveh was a large pool filled with lots of naked men, some fathers, others zadis with grandchildren. I was the youngest. Holding my papa's hand, we descended down the traditional 7 steps into the warm water. I was so excited and a bit nervous too. Then it happened. I lost my balance. My hand slipped out of my papa's hand and I panicked. I didn't know how to swim, and I felt I was drowning. I reached out, trying to grab onto anything I could, and as I found something to hold on to, there was a loud cry, as I had never heard before or since. Shema Yisrael! The old man whose privates I held on to leaped from the water with me in tow. Shema Yisrael, he kept saying over and over again. Rabbi, that was how I was saved by the Shema.
How do we give thanks for all the joy in our lives? Unto God we give praise for always being at our side. Shehechianu, Ekimanu, Vehigianu lazman hazeh. Thank you, God, for sustaining us along our way. Friends and family surround, smiling faces of light. Love and laughter abound, form a wondrous sight. Shehechianu, Vekiimanu, Vehigianu lazman hazeh. Thank you, God, for enabling us to reach this day. How to express our gratitude for the privilege of doing God's holy work in the temple and community. We give ourselves without pause, devoted to avodah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Thank you, God, for creating us and for sustaining us. Thank you, God, for enabling us to reach this day.